Welcome to the Best Little Town podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. My name is Bart Warner. I'm the town manager of Bedford and pleased to welcome you to this episode of the Best Little Town podcast, brought to you by the town of Bedford and in cooperation with our partners Media Squatch to keep all interested parties informed as to the many goings-on of your town government here in the world's best little town. Of course, I'm speaking to you this morning because we had a council meeting last night, and I'm going to jump right into a recap of what transpired there. The meeting began with my report to council, and last night I mentioned that Centerfest, which is a very large, popular downtown festival that takes place annually and kind of serves as the kickoff to the fall season, will take place on Saturday, September 21st. And of course, this event is brought to us by the good folks at the Central Virginia Business Coalition. Also, if you're not aware, the town is in the process of revising its comprehensive plan. That's being led by our Planning Commission and our excellent staff, headed by Mary Zirkle. They are preparing to release a citizen survey regarding that update because your input is of major importance in making sure that's a document that serves our purposes and advances the real needs of the community. Coincidentally, they will also be sponsoring an informational booth at Centerfest, and they're also working on a dedicated website related to that specific process as well. So please keep your eyes peeled for information we share about the comprehensive plan. That is the document that kind of spells out our vision for the future. It also is the basis for a lot of our regulations such as zoning and our budgeting planning as well. Also want to remind folks that our annual fall cleanup week is scheduled for October 7th through October 11th. That is a service we provide to the folks who pay for curbside services. I think currently that's $25 a month. And during that week, during your regularly scheduled trash day, you can put, pretty much anything out to the curb, and our public works staff, led by Tom Woodard, will pick that up. We would ask for people to be respectful of some timing related to that, and we ask that you refrain from putting items out further than the week prior to the event. We're happy to pick up your refuse and your junk, but we also don't really want it sitting out in front so everybody has to look at it as they pass by for too much longer than we have to. Also, an update on the Bedford Middle School redevelopment project. The property owner, Dave McCormick, called me last week to give me a little news on the progress there. He advised that he is meeting with his leasing agents for the apartment use that's going in there within the next week or so, and we should be seeing announcements regarding pre-leasing activity for the apartments that will be in the brick building that was the main building of the Bedford Middle School campus pretty soon. Moving on into the agenda, into appearances before council, we had 3 individuals show up to speak last night. First was Reverend Brandon Palmer of Peck's Baptist Church. He offered a scripture and a prayer on behalf of the community and town council and the leadership. Next was Ms. Jane McKeon, who lives on Peakland Court. She was there on behalf of one of her neighbors who has had a drainage issue at the end of North Branch Road. And essentially the problem is stormwater is coming from the road onto her property in a way that is not satisfactory. So we will be referring that matter to our crack engineering staff to see what we can do to help with that. We were also joined by Ms. Tracy Davis, who lives on Forest Road. She basically made a request for council to consider lowering the speed limit on Route 221, that's Forest Road, from basically encompassing the area that was just taken into the town boundaries about a year ago. Currently, the speed limit there is, I think it's 45 from the old town line to the new town line, and she was requesting that council consider reducing that to 35 miles per hour. We did note that the Public Safety Committee has discussed that previously, so we will bring that back to council's attention and ask for their direction. Council comments, there weren't a lot last night, but Bob Carson, in his moment, recognized Russell Stevens, who we will talk about a little bit later in this podcast and as part of the agenda. Councilman Stacey Haley thanked the folks who were in attendance for coming. And again, we had a pretty good turnout. Mostly it was fire department personnel to honor one of their own, but we're always happy to have folks with us at the meetings. And again, I'll mention that if you can't make it in person, you can join our live stream, or you can also see it posted on YouTube through our partners with Media Squatch. Councilman C.G. Stanley gave thanks to Reverend Palmer for his comments. Councilman Bruce Johansson recognized the fire department personnel who were there last night. Mayor Tim Black also recognized the fire department and said it was appropriate last night on the eve of the 9/11 events and the commemorations and memories we all have of that, to recognize a long-serving member of the fire department community and also our first responders in general. Moving on to reports of council committees, there were two committees that met recently. The first was a committee that's reviewing responses to a request for proposals for an electric rate study. That committee met twice this week in closed session to interview prospective firms that can help us perform that work. The electric committee met on Monday, September the 8th, and basically discussed operational matters related to our electric utility. We had a public hearing related to reappropriation of funds for outstanding purchase orders. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but essentially, the town is functional within a 12-month budget window, but it's not often that we're able to accomplish all of our work within that specific time frame. So many times we will issue purchase orders for work that span that time period. And last night we had to undertake a little bit of housekeeping business for our budget related to those type of activities. For the year just completed, we had about $572,000 worth of work that is still ongoing and needs to be carried forward. And in order to do that, we had to have a public hearing to let people comment upon that. We opened the public hearing, but no one spoke, and the public hearing was subsequently closed. Moving on, in the consent agenda, we had a request to close streets for the Christmas in Centertown and tree lighting observances. Mr. Jonathan Hayden is putting on those events on Saturday, December 7th from 1:30 p.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. And the end of the event will climax with the lighting of the 16-foot Christmas tree at 6 p.m. in Centertown Plaza. In order to accommodate that event, we're looking to close South Bridge Street between Main Street and Washington Street. And of course, Town Council voted to honor the request to close that street. There are a lot of activities that will be going on Saturday, December 7th. This is one of them. Christmas in Centertown, focused on Centertown Plaza at Bridge and Main, and then also the Christmas tree lighting at 6 o'clock p.m. Keep your ears and eyes peeled. There will be other events in conjunction with that Saturday in particular as well. The next item of new business was a proclamation honoring Mr. Russell Stevens on the occasion of his 50th anniversary of service with the Bedford Volunteer Fire Company. Mayor Black developed and read a proclamation outlining several achievements of Russell's. I'm just going to hit a few of them. Again, the longevity of his service to the company is notable. He continues to serve, by the way, mainly in a training role, but also in any capacity that they want him to. Russell, in the tenure of his association, has responded to over 13,000 emergency calls for service. He has also taken it upon himself to provide training to firefighters, not just in Bedford and in the immediate area, but also within the Commonwealth of Virginia. In fact, he is a recognized adjunct faculty member in the Virginia Fire Program's extension services there. The other thing is, a lot of folks know Russell in the community. He's a great neighbor, has a wonderful family, very humble gentleman. When asked about his service to the company and to the community. He just says he's happy to do whatever he can to help, and the council was very pleased to take the opportunity to recognize that service last night. Moving onward with the business items last night was the reappropriation of funds related to outstanding purchase orders. There were a couple of questions about some of those. There was an adjustment to the list of work that was ongoing that probably did not need to be continued. Out of the original $572,000, there was an item worth $6,700 that our electric director, John Wagner, said could be discontinued and handled in another way. So ultimately, Town Council voted unanimously to approve the budget amendment appropriating these carryover purchase orders in an amount of $565,370. The last item of new business last night, this was added to the agenda, and it relates to a Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, project in the Hilltop community, which is the neighborhood south of Washington Street that kind of follows South Bridge Street into the neighborhood and is terminated by the Susie Gibson Technical Center. The town engaged in a planning process several years ago entitled the School to School and Bridge Street Revitalization Plan. That plan, led by Mary Zirkle and involving several community members, was recognized statewide. In fact, won awards for the visioning strategy that it presented for our Centertown area and our attached neighborhoods. Part of the outcome of that in 2022 was the awarding of a CDBG grant to revitalize 13 homes in the Hilltop community. That work was very successful. The Department of Housing and Community Development, which administers that grant, was very pleased and encouraged us to do more work. And so we have received a second appropriation of $1,071,644 to initiate phase 2, which will involve renovation of 11 more houses within that area. In order to accept that grant, council had to adopt a resolution saying they wanted it and directing staff to execute the appropriate contracts. And of course, that was passed unanimously. And that concluded last night's business, which was led and conducted by your elected officials on Town Council. Closing today, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Note the significance of the date. I think those of us of age remember probably where we were on September 11th, 2001, and the nature of the world and the fact that it all really changed since then. So we give thanks for the blessings of life and liberty that we continue to enjoy, also the service of those that maybe we take for granted until we need them, and we hope they'll accept our apologies for that. And we pray for peace and security for our nation moving forward. Again, I thank you for indulging me and listening to this podcast. I'm happy to serve you. If there is anything that the town can do, if you have questions about services or if you have a problem, please contact us directly. Our phone number at Town Hall is 540-587-6001, or you can email me directly at bwarner@bedfordva.gov. We would ask that if you have a concern that you would reach out and contact us directly. The fact of the matter is we may not know about it unless you tell us. And some avenues, such as social media posts on private pages, may not be efficient, again, because if we're not directly connected, we may not know about it. So if anything is on your mind at any time, we encourage you to let us know directly, and we will do our best to respond. Until next time, when we issue another episode of this podcast, thank you again for your indulgence, your patience, and your cooperation, and thank you for all you do to make Bedford the world's best little town.